Hi, I'm Andy Wible, and welcome to Timely Topics. Today I have Dan Krueger on the show, and we'll be talking about Proposition 3, which will be on the ballot in November. Thanks for coming on the show, Dan.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Proposition 3 called Promote the Vote?
Yep.
What will people be seeing when they go to the polls?
Well, what you're going to see is a proposition, and for the most part, what they have to do is look on the back of the ballot, because usually the propositions are on the back of the ballot.
Okay.
And it's important that they look at that.
Yeah.
For Proposition 3, the proposition deals with elections and access and security on the ballot.
Okay.
And it deals with the ability for a secret ballot. It deals with the ability to send out absentee ballots at a certain time prior to the date of election. It would restore the straight party ability to vote on the ballot, which is now taken off for this election. It also would have everyone be registered to vote that wishes to be registered to vote when they go to the Secretary of State's office. And the registration date, which is now 30 days prior to the date of election, would close 15 days prior to the date of election. So there's 15 days difference there, so people have a greater opportunity to register to vote. It also gives people an opportunity to get an absentee ballot without a reason.
Okay.
So, you know, if you are working that day and you don't have time to go to the polls, you can just go get an absentee ballot. You don't have to tell them why. You just say, I want an absentee ballot, and they'll be able to give you one if this proposal passes.
Right.
And then it also includes the security issues that promote a statewide audit. So elections will be audited. After each election takes place, there will be an audit on that election. So those are the essential things in that proposal, and it essentially opens up the process. More people will have the ability or access to the ballot box, and there's security in there as well with the audit and some other things that are included.
Nice, nice. And I want to go through some of those, but first, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got interested and why kind of you're here to talk about this proposal?
Well, actually, I served as the Ottawa County Clerk and Register for 35 years. And a big portion of my job was elections. So I also served on the Michigan Association of County Clerks Legislative Committee. I served as chair and co-chair. And for many years, I argued in favor of all of these things with the legislature at different times in Lansing, probably from the mid-'80s through when I retired in 2014. So these things are nothing new to me.
Okay.
And they're near and dear to my heart. And, you know, in some cases, we wanted these things many years ago and couldn't get them. And in other cases, the technology was not quite there and ready to do some other things. So that's why we have some of these other things in the proposal. The technology is there now to get it done.
So why don't we start with the technology and what was missing prior and what is here now? Is it part of the auditing or is it?
Well, it's a little bit of both, but the biggest part of the technology issue is the change in registration process.
Okay.
Okay. You know, right now, when you go to the Driver's License Bureau and you get a driver's license, the driver's license people at the Secretary of State's office ask you, do you want to be registered to vote? And essentially, registration took place there if you wanted to be registered. Well, when this proposal takes place, everyone will be registered. The question will be, is there any reason you don't want to be registered to vote? Okay.
So you kind of have to opt out.
Right. And the technology is there now to get that done in a better way than it was before. We changed the date of close of registration from 30 days to 15 days prior to the date of election. And you have to remember the 30-day period was there for what seems like eons. And it was done simply because registration was all paper and pencil stuff. So when you went in to register to vote, you had to fill out an application. They had to take that application and literally by hand transfer it to another list, to get it to the polls on time. So your name would be there when you went in to vote. Now, with technology, and we've essentially had this for a number of years now, we have a statewide voter registration list. And when you go in and register to vote, your name is put into the computer, and we can get a list for you 5 minutes after your name is on that list. And so there isn't any reason to have that 30 days there. So we've reduced it down to 15 days. So the technology is there to get all those names in and to take care of that within the 15 days. Now, we also have a registration period within the 15 days, and then on the date of election also. And again, the 15 days is essentially, within the 15 days is essentially the same as, there are other qualifications you need to meet in order to do that registration, but the big issue is the same-day registration. And the same-day registration couldn't have occurred unless we had the technology that allowed me as a clerk, for example, to look on a statewide registry and say, is this name on that registry already?
Right.
So if it was on that registry, then I couldn't register to vote, or I shouldn't be able to register anyone to vote. If it isn't, then I can register to vote on Election Day and go ahead and vote.
Okay.
So the technology made that possible with, putting that name on that list immediately when you come in to vote on or come in to register on Election Day. Then your name goes on that list, and everybody in the world has access to that in Michigan can see it.
So if I'm not registered to vote, but I think, boy, I really want to vote, and I would go to the polling place if this passes?
No.
Where would you go to register?
You have to go to the clerk's office, to your local clerk's office.
Okay.
You live in the city, you go to the city clerk's office, you go to the county clerk's office, you can go to the township clerk's office.
Okay.
You can register at the clerk's office within the 15 days. Now, if you're going to register to vote now, I think the close of registration just passed.
Yeah.
So you can't do that anymore. But if this one, this proposal passes, you could still have another 14 days to go register to vote.
Right.
And that would be great. Now, within that 15-day period, let's talk about that one a minute, because, there's a little caveat that occurs here. In Michigan, you have to be a resident 30 days before you're eligible to vote.
Okay.
Okay. So if, for example, someone comes in within that 15-day period before the election, they have to prove their residency as well as their citizenship.
Okay.
So you still have the ID thing, that when you go into the polls, you have to show your ID. When you register, you've got to show your ID. But you also, within that 15-day period, you're going to have to show residency. So you're going to have to show that you live in Muskegon Township, or you live in, the city of Muskegon, or city of Holland, or Newaygo, or wherever you're living. So, that qualifies you to do that. Now, you have to make sure that you understand, too, that if I'm moving in a local unit, so I'm moving from Muskegon Township to Fruitport Township, for example, and I want to register because I'm going to have to register again in Fruitport Township if I'm moving, that you have to prove your residency in Fruitport Township 30 days prior to the registration.
Right. And how would you do that? Like a bill or something, or would it be your driver's license, or both?
Obviously, by law, you're supposed to change your driver's license when you do that. So your driver's license is one. You can do a utility bill, a water bill, electric bill, or some other bill that gives your address on that particular bill that shows that you have lived there for that period of time.
Okay. If you say you marry someone and your name's not on the bill, that might be tough. But
might be tough, but you can still get away with proof some way that you can do that.
Okay. Good. The other thing you mentioned was absentee ballot. Right now, you can get an absentee ballot, but you have to put a reason down. You have to be out of town or retired or various reasons. If this proposal passes, it would allow no reason?
No reason AV. And essentially, what what I always talk to people about is that over the years, the history of the United States, okay, if you recall when the country was first organized, they had town meetings, and in order to vote in a town meeting, you had to go to the town meeting and do that. Well, as the country began to grow, they set up voting areas around, then called precincts, so you could go to a precinct and vote instead of going to a town meeting.
Yeah.
And then they realized that people were out of town when the election occurred, but they'd still like to vote, so you gave them the absentee ballot, but you had to have a reason for an absentee ballot. So, and that's all because the system changed, the society changed, the movement of people changed, and so forth. And we're in that same situation. We have people who are working first, second, and third shift today. Years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case. We had them working second shift, but very few of them were second shift, third shift, except during the war. And then we had a lot of people who are in families where both parents work, and they have duties at home with family and so forth as well. So the essence of the thing is, let's open this up and let those people who don't have the ability to go to the polls on election day for certain reasons to get an absentee ballot. Their access then becomes greater than they've ever had before. Now, I've had calls from women who have said, you know, why can't I get an absentee ballot? Because I'm not out of town, but you know, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm getting breakfast for my family and my kids getting ready for school, and I've got to drop them off at school or daycare before that, and I have to be at work at 8 o'clock, okay? So I work until noon. At noon, I had to go out and do some errands, and I wanted to stop by and vote at noon. I walk into the polling place. The lines are so great that I can't take time to do that, all right? So I get out of work at 5 o'clock. All right, what do you do at 5 o'clock? You go home and fix supper, you get the kids ready for bed, you do a little family time, and by the time you're ready to go vote, it's 8 o'clock.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So why shouldn't these people be allowed to get an absentee ballot? There's no reason other than, you know, and we do have reasons out there that, you know, what most people don't understand is that the reason on the ballot right now says, I intend to be out of town on election day. So, for example, if you wanted to go shopping in Grand Rapids on election day, you could get an absentee ballot if you wanted to go say, I intend to be out of town.
Right.
So,
yeah, I just felt like not with the reasons, sometimes it wasn't the reason that was listed, but you think it's a good reason. So you either have to lie or not vote.
Right.
And this would avoid that.
We don't want them to lie. We don't want them to not vote.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we want both of those things.
I know I always have taught on Tuesday night from 6 to 9. And I always have heard students say, you know, I came straight from work. I didn't have, there was no time.
Yep.
I either had to skip your class or vote. And I came to your class. I said, well, I guess that's good, but
good for you.
I do want you to vote.
Yep, absolutely.
Another part of the absentee balloting has to do with people in the military. How would that change? Doesn't it extend the time or something for?
Actually, that part of it is already law.
Oh, it is already law, so.
Yeah. There's a 45-day limit. Now, all the ballots have to be sent out overseas once you get the requests in. If you can, ballots have to be ready to be sent out overseas 45 days prior to the date of election. That is being put in the Constitution by this proposal simply because we don't want it to change. All right. You can send them out earlier, but not later. Okay.
So to give them plenty of time to vote.
Yeah, and that comes along with the technology. There, you know, if you think ahead, there may be a lot of different technological things that can be done to get ballots out earlier, but you don't want them to get them out later, because the later they get out, the harder it is for them to get back in, and they don't get counted. So that's already there, but we're just making it a constitutional issue.
I see. Do you think if this passes, will a lot more people take advantage of the absentee ballot?
I think they're probably, right now we get about 27, 28% of the people that vote by absentee ballot. I would expect that if this passes, initially you probably go up to maybe 30 to 35%. But I've talked to a lot of people who've been at the polls on election day, and especially older people. Why do you go to the polls on election day when the law says if you're 60 and older, you can get an absentee ballot? No, I love to come here. I love to see people that are in the precinct and they're voting, and I see people I haven't seen in a year or so forth. You know? So there are always going to be those people who love to go to the polls on election day for whatever reason it is, and that's great. We love to see them at the polls.
Right. And I'm kind of one of those people. I like to go vote. I mean, I've had to do the absentee a couple of times, but there's certain excitement about being there and filling in the little things and stuff.
I know.
Well, let's talk about some other parts of this. You mentioned, I think the first thing was a secure ballot or a secret.
It's a secret ballot.
A secret ballot.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like we kind of have that already, or
we do.
Okay.
We do. But again, this is one of those things we're putting in the constitutional amendment to make sure that everyone realizes this is a secret ballot. There are provisions in law right now that that tell you that this is a secret ballot. You as a person may lose your right to vote if there are certain things that you do to make your ballot not secret. For example, there's a provision in Michigan law right now, and this is not going to change that.
Okay.
But if you go into the polls and you vote on election day, and you say, "Here's my ballot. Look at how I voted," you lose your right to vote.
Facebook Live and all that. Yeah.
Okay. So what we want to make sure of is people understand that you have a right to a secret ballot.
Okay.
And it's just like any other right that you have as a citizen. This is a citizen's right to have a secret ballot.
And so I was actually talking to a friend, and he said, "Hey," he said, "have you seen this app?" And he said, "I can see how you voted." It was actually just to see that I voted, but it seems like that's getting a little intrusion to exactly.
There is no way
to know who I voted.
To know who you voted. There's a young gentleman, he's not so young anymore, out of Lansing. He's a very astute mathematician, and essentially he will tell you he can figure out by the number of votes and who voted which way. But that's guesswork.
Yeah.
Okay. There is no way that I can tell how you voted, or you could tell how anybody else voted.
Yeah.
It just can't happen.
Well, it's good. We'll secure that.
Yes, we will.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the auditing of the elections, and how again, if this passes, how would that look different statewide audit? And I guess some people, including myself, I'm surprised we don't do that already.
We do.
Okay.
It's one of the other things that we do, but this is something that the Bureau, the Elections Bureau, State of Michigan, has instituted. And instituted when I was still working 6-7 years ago, they started this. But it was done by random. So what they would do is go through a process and say, all right, today we're going to audit Precinct 1 in City of Muskegon, Precinct 2 in Allendale, Precinct 3 in Livonia, and so on and so forth. So it was a random audit.
I see.
Okay. What this does is suggest that audits will occur after every election in every precinct. And there's a way that they do that. And essentially what we did is we go in and count the number of ballots and count the votes and see if they all match up. And that's what happens.
Okay.
So, and as long as we're talking about that, one of the issues that does come up occasionally is people will call and say, well, I'd love to vote absentee, but do my absentee ballots count? And this will make sure that those ballots do count.
Okay.
So I have never heard of anyone not counting absentee ballots in the state of Michigan, but they will count. And one of the other things I think people aren't aware of is that Both political parties can get lists of who's gotten an absentee ballot, how many absentee ballots have been
okay.
out there.
Yeah.
So you can tell by the number of people who've gone into the precinct and voted and the number of people who have gotten an absentee ballot for that precinct. If those numbers mesh, then your ballots count. So we know that.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. And one of the concerns people have maybe with this or think they have with it is that people who are not really qualified to vote could vote. That this, because we're promoting more people getting out there to vote, some people who aren't or shouldn't be registered to vote would get the opportunity to do so. Do you think that's a legitimate concern or not?
It's not a legitimate concern in my view, because I know, what we're going to go through. You have to get a registration process that is secure, and ours is. So if you're not registered, you don't get an absentee ballot. And we do have a process in place that says that if I, as an election worker or as a clerk, have somebody coming in that wants to vote or is not on my voter registration list that I'm questioning, I can give them, we're not going to prohibit them from voting, but we give them what we call a provisional ballot.
Okay.
And the provisional ballot allows them to vote, but then we check the registration after the election. And the registration then, if it's checked, their vote counts. And if it doesn't, if they're not registered, then it doesn't count.
Okay.
So there is a process in place to make sure that everyone that votes, if he or she is questioned, that we can double check to see if that occurs. And then they will vote that provisional ballot. So,
will this increase the number of provisional ballots, do you think, or?
Well, it may.
It may.
It may. That means simply that, people who are going to vote on election day may be voting the provisional or affidavit ballot. But other than that, I don't see any significant increase in the provisional ballot process.
Okay.
So, and then, you've got to remember too that the clerks have to check all of this out, and they've got 6 days after the election to make sure that all of this is taken care of. And if you vote a provisional ballot, you'll get a note from the clerk in the city or township, wherever, saying that we've checked your registration and your ballot does count or your ballot doesn't count.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there's a follow-up
There's
on
still,
that.
still a lot of checks and balances.
You
in
bet.
there.
You bet.
I guess the other thing you mentioned is that straight ticket party voting would be allowed again.
Yes.
We've had that, but this upcoming election, I guess we won't have it. Is
You
that
will not have it this election.
So why put that into place, and maybe why did we lose that?
There's a lot of reasons why it was taken away. But I think we have to understand that this has been referended twice.
Okay.
It was referended in 1964. The straight party ticket policy was taken away. It was put back on because of it being referendumed. We did it in 2002, and I was part of that referendum effort. And again, it was put back on the ballot.
Really?
And again, in 2016, it was taken off. There are a lot of various reasons why it's taken off. Some people feel that we ought to go office by office.
Force you to look at every candidate.
Force look at every candidate and every office and vote candidate, not political party. There are others who feel that by going all of the way down the ballot, you will not miss the nonpartisan and some other
Okay.
offices that are on there. People do skip over. I mean, if you look at the ballot, you get a fall off. Once you get past your state representatives, state senate, and those areas, you have a general fall off sometimes because people say, they're not important, we don't vote on
I
them.
don't know who they are.
Or they just get,
Tired.
taken long enough and that's it.
Yeah.
So they feel that by going office by office, it's better. I've always advocated that we have a straight party option on the ballot. what a lot of people don't understand is that a straight party option still gives you the opportunity to do exactly that.
Yeah.
You go office by office.
I've always done that myself, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though that option was there, I've never used
Yep.
it, yeah.
And essentially, if you want to vote straight party Democrat or Republican, go down to governor, you can vote for the party opposite that straight party
Okay.
you've done, and it will still count. So,
It just
there's
gives
no difference. Now, what people don't understand is that there is a provision in Michigan law that says you have 2 minutes in the voting booth.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow,
All right.
I did not know that.
Now, I don't know that we've ever enforced it.
Okay,
But there is that provision, 2 minutes. Now, if you're forcing people to go into the polling place on Election Day, all of them, and vote every office down the ballot, and by the way, Michigan has one of the largest ballots in the United States, it's going to take a significant amount of time longer than it would be if you voted straight party and then went down to the
Right.
offices that you didn't want to vote that party. So this may result in longer lines. And essentially, straight party gives you an opportunity to do the same thing in a lot speedier way
Right.
than you do now.
so if this passes, it would decrease the
Right.
amount of time to vote.
Right.
Ah,
Yeah, I talked to one of my clerk friends about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and he said they figured out that by going non-straight party in a ballot, it would constitute more than 16 hours of additional time people would take in the polling place.
Wow.
So that doesn't mean that they're going to be open longer. It just means that the lines are going to be
longer,
and
yeah.
they may have to set up more polling places or more booths and
Right,
stuff
right,
like that.
yeah. And if you don't have that much time to vote for work
Right.
or other reasons, that can be a
Yeah.
problem.
Well, it's so much easier because, probably 95% of the people go in, they're either going to vote majority Democrat or majority Republican.
Right.
And why not have that just little check mark, then, okay, I'm going to do this, but in this office, I want to vote for
Yeah.
this other candidate in that particular party.
Sure.
And you can still do that.
Still do that. Good to know. Well, this has all been wonderful information, and so thanks for telling us about Proposal 3, Promote the Vote.
And, one of the last things I want to tell you is
Sure.
that none of this is new.
Okay.
This happens in a lot of other states throughout the United States in different ways. But, this is tried and tested stuff. So
Okay.
we're not breaking the bank and doing things that we shouldn't be doing here. This is all tried and tested, and it's done in other states. And we're simply saying Michigan ought to catch up in the process and allow people greater access and more security than we presently have.
Great. All right, well, thanks again.
You're welcome.
And thank you, everyone, for watching Timely Topics. We've been talking about Proposal 3 with Dan Krueger. He's the former Ottawa County Clerk. And until next time, have a great day.